In a fantasy world full of magic and creatures, our hero named Yuuki wakes up without understanding anything that's happening around him. He's left lying in the middle of nowhere as if he'd been thrown out of paradise, straight into a trap. He comes face to face with a mysterious little girl, very cute, but with a determined gaze. Her name is Kokoro, and she introduces herself right away without any hesitation. She was sent by the goddess Amis with a very clear mission: to protect Yuuki, no matter what. Kokoro explains that she found Yuuki unconscious in the middle of a pack of hungry wolves. By pure luck or divine intervention, she showed up just in time to save his skin, because if she had been a bit later, only a few pieces of him would have been left. Still under tense atmosphere, she asks the boy for his name. Yuuki thinks for a moment, and a bit confused, he replies with what he remembers, saying, his name is Yuuki. According to the goddess Amis, he lost nearly all of his memories, which is why he looks so clueless. But he can relax, because Kokoro is there to help the one chosen by the gods to find his path again. Even without understanding anything that's going on, Yuuki decides to trust her. After all, Kokoro speaks with such confidence and doesn't leave any room for doubt. He just nods his head, pretending that he understood everything perfectly. To give him a hand, Kokoro pulls a snack out from her bag, a freshly made onigiri. She explains that since Yuuki's memory is wiped out, it's best to make sure that at least his stomach is full. He happily accepts it and devours the snack with joy, like someone who hasn't eaten in days. But the peace doesn't last long. Smelling opportunity, the wolves return for another round. Kokoro doesn't even blink, draws her weapon, and stands in front of Yuuki, ready to protect her master. She warns that even though they look scary, these wolves are just the beginning, and they're perfect opponents for training, gaining experience, and maybe awakening that hidden power that lies inside Yuuki. His future is a grand one, and she promises she's ready to face whatever comes. Alongside him, even confused, Yuuki realizes something important is happening there. So, with no real choice, he grabs a sword and joins Kokoro to face the wolf pack. But before he can even make a heroic move, Yuuki is caught off guard by a charge and ends up getting dragged far away. And poor guy, he doesn't even know where the hit came from. His first combat adventure ends in total failure, and once again it's Kokoro who saves the day. Despite the scare, Yuuki walks away unharmed, without a scratch to tell the tale. He gets up, slightly dizzy, and tells Kokoro that everything's under control, but before she can relax, he just faints again. Now, Yuuki is more lost than ever. He just woke up in this world, he has no memories, and he's behaving like a child, about 7 or 8 years old. Innocent, obedient, and with that pure look of someone who still doesn't know what to expect from life. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the mountain, the scene shifts to a girl with orange hair, who's calmly washing her face in a lake. Her plan is simple, to go to the town center that day, but suddenly she hears a loud scream coming from who knows where, interrupting any sense of peace she had. She runs toward the sound and finds 2 guys, one chubby and one very skinny, with the smaller one crying and holding the other, who's lying on the ground. The tall, skinny guy points to a big tree in the distance, saying that his older brother suddenly felt sick. The medicine is in the bag under that tree, and he begs her to go get it and save his brother. Since she's incredibly generous, she doesn't think twice and takes off in that direction. As soon as she turns around, the 2 laugh wickedly, and when she comes back, she finds out they ran off with her belongings. Meanwhile, Kokoro and Yuuki continue on their way to the city, which is full of people and noise. It's that typical chaotic atmosphere, and Yuuki walks around with a curious look, totally lost with so many new things around, and Kokoro takes the chance to start explaining the basics. In this world, there's everything: humans, beastmen, demons, elves, and many other exotic races. She even reveals that she herself is not human, but rather an elf. The city they're in is called Landasol, the heart of the continent, and it's the center of all the adventures they're going to have. Kokoro keeps talking and detailing everything, all excited, but suddenly, she realizes Yuuki has vanished into the crowd. Panicking, she looks around until she finds out where he went. Yuuki is standing still and hypnotized, staring at a food stall. The stall owner, seeing the 2 together, first thinks they're siblings, but then changes. he changes his mind and drops a comment saying they make a great couple. Kokoro, a little embarrassed, corrects him immediately, but Yuuki doesn't care, he just wants to eat. With shining eyes, Yuuki points at 2 dishes on the menu, choosing them, only based on the tastiest sounding name. When it's time to pay, Kokoro hands him the money, but he's completely lost with the rules of this world. Yuuki puts the coins in his mouth, thinking it's some kind of strange food, and Kokoro has to explain with all the patience in the world that it's money, and those coins are used to buy things. That currency is very important, and he can't go around biting it or losing it. He understands, and a bit awkwardly, he does everything right on the second try. With food in hand, the two sit down on a bench to enjoy their meal, savoring that simple moment without any hurry. But once the feast ends, an even bigger problem arises. They're out of money and don't have enough even for a basic place to stay. The sun is already gone, night is falling, and desperation sets in. Kokoro even considers selling the magical staff her own father gave her, just to scrape together some coins, but Yuuki absolutely refuses. That's a gift far too special for her to give up. With no other option, they end up improvising. They build a small campfire and decide to sleep right there on the mountain under the starry sky. It's full survival mode, but with that good-humored spirit of people who've already gotten used to hardship. But the peace doesn't last long. Just when they think they can finally rest, those same wolves from before decide to show up again, proving they're extremely persistent. It's as if they sense something different about Yuuki, because the beasts won't give up and keep trying to attack him, as if they knew something special lies within. The next day, after a difficult night, Kokoro wakes up visibly shaken by everything. With a determined look, she gives Yuuki the entire coin pouch, saying he can use it however he wants. She feels the need to find a job right away to take proper care of her master, showing all her devotion, even knowing how valuable money is. Kokoro doesn't hesitate before trusting Yuuki with everything, believing that this way she's truly helping him. Noticing Yuuki still seems lost, Kokoro assumes maybe the money wasn't enough, so she arranges to meet him again that afternoon, promising to bring more coins. Before leaving, Yuuki surprises Kokoro with a tight, sincere hug, the kind of hug that says more than any words could. He had already been told money was something valuable, but receiving it like that moves him in a different way. Not knowing how to express what he feels, Yuuki just thanks her in his own way, and Kokoro completely understands. Then, Yuuki says he also wants to work, and united in this purpose, the two of them head together toward an inn in the city center. Upon arrival, they meet Carrie, a young woman with a striking presence. She's the one in charge of managing the place. On the wall, a huge board displays various job options. Kokoro spots a monster hunting quest, something she has experience with, but she quickly realizes they're not high enough level yet to take on such a mission. Carrie, noticing the situation, suggests something more suitable for beginners: gathering some mushrooms that grow near some old ruins. It seems like the perfect job for newcomers, and they both accept it at once, thanking her for the opportunity. Meanwhile, the anime introduces us to Pecorin. She's that vibrant-haired girl from earlier. She's still worried about one of those brothers who was sick. But not only that, she's also trying to find her missing sword, and she doesn't even imagine someone may have taken it with more sinister intentions. At one point, Pecorin spots from afar the two brothers known for stirring trouble around the region. She notices they're acting strangely anxious and decides to approach to investigate. But as soon as they notice her, the two thieves take off running, racing through the trees in a desperate attempt to get away from her. Pecorin runs after them, determined, but soon loses sight of both. In the chaos, the brothers end up stumbling into a dangerous part of the forest, where something strange and threatening appears before them, turning the chase into a moment of pure desperation. They panic, realizing that now the problem is much bigger than just running from a tough-looking girl. While all this chaos is happening, Yuuki and Kokoro carry on with their quest to gather mushrooms around the ruins. Kokoro teaches Yuuki how to collect the best mushrooms, and after a few instructions, they split up to speed up the task. During the search, Kokoro finds a strange mushroom that repeats a funny sound. The sound is literally Pewty Pewty, so she decides to name it Pewtico. Meanwhile, Yuuki ends up crossing paths with Pecorin not long after, and he notices she's exhausted and starving, nearly collapsing from fatigue. With freshly gathered mushrooms in hand, Yuuki brings her to Kokoro, and together the three improvise a feast to recover their energy, generously sharing the little they have. After eating until they can't anymore, Pecorine introduces herself with a ridiculously long name. So Kokoro, to keep it simple, starts calling her Pecorine anyway, and little by little, discovers that she was also there to gather some mushrooms. The atmosphere among the group is one of relief, but it doesn't last long. Out of nowhere, a bunch of giant mushrooms suddenly appear behind them and charge. Without any warning. The attack is sudden, but luckily they all manage to escape at first, seeing they're surrounded. Kokoro suggests they join forces to defeat the monsters. With no other choice, the group goes on the offensive, but in the heat of battle, the little girl ends up being captured by one of the enemies. In that moment, Yuuki feels something different awaken within him. Faced with danger, he unlocks an impressive hidden power, and without even realizing it, he unleashes a brilliant light that protects his companions. Kokoro and Pecorine are bathed in this unexpected glow, and feel their strength multiply, absurdly, as if they've been given extra power, a real buff. With this renewed energy, they manage to turn the tables, defeat all the giant mushrooms, and claim victory. After the battle, while dragging the bodies of the fallen mushrooms because after all, it would be a waste to leave behind that much food, the small Putico tries to bite Pecorine. She effortlessly grabs him out of the air and pops him into her mouth as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Kokoro, witnessing the scene, is stunned, and right after, it's like an explosion goes off in her head because Putico simply fuses with Pecorine, who instantly gets dizzy, almost like she's drunk, and passes out on the spot, falling onto Yuuki's back, who carries the girl away without a word. The next day, Kokoro goes looking for Yuuki and finds him training hard with his sword, showing focus and commitment. The mushrooms they gathered the day before become a delicious breakfast, thanks to Kokoro's cooking skills. While eating, the two chat and wonder how Pecorine is doing. She had mentioned the day before that she'd return to Landisol. Kokoro also points out that their money is running out fast, so maybe it's time to look for a more permanent place to stay. As they discuss the next steps, a man overhears their conversation, walks over and starts a chat, suggesting Kokoro work as a guide. He even promises to lend them a house to use as a base. Before they can consider the offer, the restaurant owner shows up to shoo the man away, bringing order back to the place. Elsewhere, the two thief brothers who had been attacked by the giant mushrooms a few days ago finally wake up, startled by the noise from some crows. Still disoriented, they start thinking of ways to sell the sword they managed to get. Meanwhile, Pecorine wakes up in a stable, and as usual, she's hungry once again. By coincidence, Yuuki and Kokoro run into Pecorine during a food competition, and at the same event, they also spot the two thieves again. Pecorine, without hesitation, goes after them with determination, while Kokoro and Yuuki decide to follow her. For some reason, the main trio seems to attract monsters, because soon they're once again facing danger along the way. With her overwhelming strength, Pecorine lands a precise blow and defeats the enemy. On the very first try, the wild boar is sent flying, crashing down onto a woman nearby and knocking her unconscious. Feeling responsible, the group decides to wait for her to wake up, not realizing that the woman is the very one behind the recent monster attacks. When she comes to, the woman finds herself face to face with Pecorine, who silently watches her. Instead of thanking them, the mysterious Carol simply stands up and walks away, cold and distant. Then, sitting on a tree branch, she talks to herself until she randomly sees the two thief brothers passing by. Suddenly, a giant dragon descends from the sky and carries the two away, leaving Carol completely stunned. And just to be clear, Carol had nothing to do with it, but she found the whole thing amusing. Thinking quickly, she sees potential in the dragon and heads over to Pecorine, showing the group where the monster is hiding. Kokoro remembers the request from the innkeeper. The city had warned that the dragon had appeared because it was drawn to rare things, and now he lives near Landisol. So the group heads to the cave where the dragon is resting, with each of them having their own goal. The monster is enormous and firmly holds the sword in its mouth. At that moment, Carol, without any concern, abandons the group and vanishes without warning. Facing the challenge, Yuuki quickly comes up with a plan. He'll act as a distraction for the dragon, while Kokoro handles support and Pecorine launches the attack. The group organizes itself with determination, but soon realizes that things don't always go as planned. Only half the plan works, and Yuuki ends up getting caught, landing right inside the dragon's mouth, along with the highly coveted sword. There, Pecorine tries everything to retrieve the sword, but the dragon's strength is overwhelming. She gives it her all, but ends up being tossed from side to side, becoming completely dizzy. She nearly collapses, but at the last second, she manages to hang on thanks to the chubby thief who shows up to lend a hand. At this moment, we see Carol just below, analyzing the situation and taking advantage of an opening. She casts a spell on the dragon, manipulating its movements. Her goal is to make Pecorine lose balance and fall. But the plan doesn't go as expected. Amid the chaos, Yuuki decides to take action on his own, using his cape to cover the dragon's eyes, completely disorienting the beast. Now blind, the dragon loses direction, which creates an opportunity for Pecorine to act. Out of control, the dragon crashes down right on the spot where Carol was hiding. At that moment, the spell on the dragon's eyes is broken, putting everyone back on equal footing. The monster awakens in a fury and charges straight at Carol, but Pecorine intervenes at the last second, courageously protecting the girl. With sword in hand, Pecorine steps forward for the final battle, and together they manage to keep everyone safe. The two thief brothers, feeling grateful, sincerely thank Pecorine for saving their skins and everyone else's. After things calm down, Pecorine takes Carol's hand, showing a true gesture of appreciation. After all, a big part of the victory came from Carol's effort, who guided the group down the right path. Without her, no one would have been able to defeat that beast. With the sunset painting the sky orange, Pecorine says goodbye to the two uncles, one skinny and the other rounder, and even manages to convince Carol to have dinner with her that night. Even if the menu is just a few rice balls made from lunch leftovers, the meal still carries a special taste. During dinner, Pecorine proposes creating a gourmet guild, inviting Carol to join the group, but Carol, keeping her usual stern expression, declines the invitation and leaves, making it clear she has other priorities. She admits the rice ball is delicious, but knows there are more important things to deal with at the moment. The whole day, Carol kept an eye on Pecorine, trying to find some kind of weakness, but she realized that aside from her passion for food, the girl has nothing to hide. Meanwhile, Kokoro goes to a place where she can officially register a guild, but she only picks up the forms and leaves the registration for later. Outside, Yuuki is still waiting for Kokoro's return. From a distance, he sees someone small collapsing, exhausted and nearly out of strength. That scene reminds Yuuki of the moment he first met Pecorine. Without thinking much, he approaches and gently places a rice ball beside the person. He offers the food and walks away calmly, doing what's right. What Yuuki doesn't realize is that behind him, a smiling shadow watches with an enigmatic gaze, observing everything closely. As soon as Kokoro finishes collecting the forms, they head back together. Along the way, they find Carol spying from outside the restaurant where Pecorine is once again devouring everything in sight. Yuuki and Kokoro invite Carol to eat with them, proud as ever. She refuses, but the sound of her stomach quickly gives her away, showing that hunger speaks much louder. Now seated at the table, Carol tries to maintain her cold demeanor, avoiding any emotional closeness. Pecorine, always kind, hands her the menu, telling her to choose whatever she wants. But the restaurant owner soon shows up and announces that the ingredients are nearly gone. Only one special dish remains, an ancient recipe that few even know about. Without hesitation, Pecorine orders the mysterious option. When the plates arrive, Carol quickly notices the secret. All of them contain insects in the recipe. The presentation may be deceptive, but on the inside, the dish is still delicious. Kokoro tastes it first, without hesitation, and quickly offers it to Yuuki to try as well. Just from looking at it, Carol turns pale with fear. Kokoro, very calm, explains that it's important to keep Yuuki's meals on track. After all, you can't live without eating. Taking advantage of Carol's distraction, Pecorine places a piece of the dish in her mouth. The shock is so intense that Carol nearly faints for a second, but to her surprise, the flavor is incredible. Lunch flows peacefully, with everyone enjoying the same food together. Embracing the moment, Kokoro slowly takes out the registration form and invites the group to form a guild. Pecorine doesn't hesitate for a second, runs up and hugs Kokoro, excited about the idea. As always, Carol keeps her distant stance, stands up, thanks them for the meal, and leaves without much talk. As she walks away, Carol starts blaming herself. After all, her mission was to eliminate Pecorine, and now here she is, sitting down, tasting insect food, and feeling completely at ease. trying to distract herself. She grabs a tamarind, tastes the sour flavor, and decides to pick more. But soon hears a familiar voice calling her name. When she turns around, she sees an old acquaintance who immediately begins questioning her, asking if she isn't getting too comfortable while the mission remains undone. Irritated, Carol tries to ignore him, but she feels the weight of his gaze and the silent pressure. That won't leave her back. The next day begins, and Pecorine shows up cheerful, announcing that the restaurant owner has invited her to work there. He realized she has a special talent for handling the secret menu and made the offer on the spot. And the timing couldn't be better, since Pecorine was out of money, and now she can work, earn her own income, and still taste everything she loves. On the other hand, Kokoro holds the guild form, feeling a bit down, and this time, she's not even excited to show it to anyone. On her very first day at work, Pecorine wins everyone over. With her upbeat personality and contagious energy, she fills the restaurant with joy, making every customer feel at home. Meanwhile, Kokoro just watches, takes a deep breath, and realizes that the dream of forming a guild will take a bit longer to come true. 3 little girls enter the restaurant and are immediately welcomed by Pecorine, who offers them the most famous dish in the house. Outside, Carol paces back and forth, lost in thought. The day before, her boss had ordered the immediate cancellation of the mission to eliminate Pecorine, and now everything feels a little different. Later, Carol hears a few words that warm her heart, restoring her confidence. With her spirit renewed, she feels that divine forces are on her side, ready to help. And just like that, she decides to walk through the restaurant doors. As she crosses the entrance, Carol hears Pecorine about to serve breaded shrimp to a group of innocent children. Noticing Carol's presence, Kokoro takes the chance to grab the guild application form and discreetly approaches her. However, Carol notices and immediately calls her out, scolding her before any invitation can be made. Suddenly, Carol remembers the reason she came there. It was exactly to join the guild. After clearing her throat twice, she starts to speak about it, but stumbles over her own words. Before she can explain, a huge man walks into the restaurant, imposing his presence with an arrogant attitude. The rude and impolite man bluntly asks if they serve insects there. Before finishing the sentence, he starts pushing other customers aside, creating a tense atmosphere. He throws himself into a chair in the middle of the restaurant, demanding to be served immediately. The restaurant owner appears to try to restore order, but ends up being caught off guard. The man breaks his arm as if it were nothing, shocking everyone around. Faced with the situation, Pecorine decides to take action. She accepts the challenge, determined to show her talent in the kitchen. What few people know is that Pecorine has a special gift. Just by tasting any dish, she can instantly understand how to prepare it perfectly. She prepares a meal with flawless presentation and irresistible flavor, pouring her heart into the recipe. The man, who was actually sent by a rival to ruin the restaurant's reputation, is already set on criticizing everything, no matter how good it tastes. Meanwhile, Carol sees the fallen form on the ground, thinks for a second, then gets up and takes initiative. Before the man can try the dish, Carol steps in and asks him to wait just a moment. With confidence, she says she'll reveal the true taste of the gods. She grabs some tamarind, squeezes its sour juice over the dish, and finishes the recipe with an unexpected twist. The plate, served by Pecorine and completed by Carol, even shines with a special glow, capturing everyone's attention inside the restaurant. The man can't resist and, on impulse, he immediately grabs the chopsticks to give it a try. The moment he tastes the first bite, he feels an explosion of flavors, something he had never experienced before. He even doubts whether that dish was really made with bugs. Each bite delivers a delightful harmony, as if he were listening to a symphony. Inside his own head, the people who were expecting chaos, thinking the man would ruin the restaurant's reputation, end up just watching, filled with curiosity and hunger. The man's spirit lifts to the skies. He surrenders to the moment, declaring for all to hear that the dish is simply sensational, but trying to maintain his pose. He throws the plate to the floor, smashing everything. He threatens them, saying he'll shut the restaurant down no matter what. Yuuki, seeing the scene, won't accept that. He firmly grabs the man's arm and, with a determined look, makes it clear that he may try whatever he wants, but wasting food won't be allowed. At the end of the day, with everything calmer, Carol finally gathers the courage and tells the group she's officially joining the guild. Now, with 4 members, the team is complete, ready to face new adventures. Their goal is simple and ambitious: to explore the world, discover all kinds of food and ingredients, and enjoy every meal together. Excited, they head to the house they got to use as the guild base, but once they open the door, disappointment strikes. From the outside, it looks like a dream mansion, but inside it's a mess, everything old, dusty, and with a spooky atmosphere. They all get discouraged and immediately start complaining to Carol, who answers awkwardly, explaining that there weren't many choices and that was the only house left. She assures them there's nothing dangerous, there are just a few rumors about a ghost occasionally showing up to rest. Even with the weird vibe, Kokoro sees the good side and says it's wonderful just to have a roof to sleep under. She asks Carol if she can clean the place up, and the leader approves instantly. The whole group gets involved in the cleanup. They sweep, scrub, throw junk away until the place starts to come back to life again. In the middle of the cleanup, Yuuki remembers the most important detail: a table for their meals. After all, the guild's purpose is to always gather everyone to eat together, so the table must be special. Determined, Yuuki decides to build the table with his own hands. Without wasting time, he heads into the village in search of wood. Meanwhile, Kokoro goes to buy basic supplies, trying to save as much as possible with what's left from the Dragon Quest. At the market, Kokoro meets a girl named Shinobu, who gifts her a pretty welcome plate to celebrate the start of the new guild. She soon finds out that Shinobu is the leader of another guild. Saren, Shinobu's boss, has an employee named Suzune and promises to take care of the store while she's away. Saren asks Suzune to help carry the shopping home. On the way, their conversation is cheerful and full of stories and good laughs. During the walk back home, Suzune takes the opportunity to talk and ends up telling Kokoro that her boss, Saren, was once vice captain of the Royal Knights. Despite holding such a prominent position, she gave it all up to care for orphan children, or those separated from their parents, founding the Serendia Charity House. This story surprises Kokoro and helps her realize there are people who change lives through their choices. After a while walking, the two reach a very remote area, a place both beautiful and isolated, like a forgotten paradise on the far side of the world. But the atmosphere quickly shifts. Suddenly, they realize they're in the middle of a dark forest, where all they can see are glowing red eyes. Fear takes over them both. Kokoro tries to calm Suzune down, but ends up saying something the wrong way, which only scares the girl even more. Without thinking twice, Suzune pulls the cart to try escaping as fast as possible. In the chaos, Suzune trips on a rock and falls face first to the ground, while the donkey bolts into the forest. The silence is broken by a strange noise coming from the bushes. Kokoro tries to react. She grabs a rope, makes a loop, and throws it toward the sound, managing to catch something. But to everyone's surprise, what she lassos isn't a monster. It's a donkey. Another different donkey that speaks, and on top of that, is full of charm. And to add to the surprise, the donkey is female and loves receiving compliments. Her name is Hima. She says she works on a farm called Elizabeth Park, located on the other side of the forest. Kokoro explains they were pulling a wagon when their donkey ran off, causing all the confusion. Without hesitation, Hima offers to help. Despite her humble style, she proves she's truly strong and doesn't mind carrying weight, since on the farm she deals with even tougher tasks every single day. Kokoro even feels a little embarrassed, thinking Hima might get exhausted from carrying such heavy loads, but quickly realizes that, for the little helper, that's no big deal. Meanwhile, back at the guild house, Yuuki and Carol continue the cleaning. Carol sets up a chair so Yuuki can reach the window and clean it more easily. But out of nowhere, a bug crawls up under her skirt. Terrified, Carol lets go of everything, and the chair Yuuki was standing on loses support. He ends up falling straight to the floor, hitting his head hard. After the fall, Yuuki feels a bit dizzy, almost as if he's dreaming. In that state, he ends up seeing a mysterious girl. It's Amis, the goddess who had appeared before. She speaks briefly, giving him just a hint of what's happening, because she knows. Yuuki isn't ready to understand the whole truth yet. Amis doesn't go on for long, but she creates a magical shield and sends him back to reality. Before disappearing, she leaves behind an important message. When the bond between Yuuki and the girls in his group becomes stronger, she'll return to help him once again, just like before. However, Yuuki must be patient until that moment arrives. When Yuuki wakes up, the first thing he sees is Carol's worried gaze, who breathes in relief upon realizing that nothing serious happened. He still remembers the message from the dream, especially regarding Carol's complicated situation, and tries to show that he's okay. making a small gesture to reassure her. Even while still a bit disoriented, Yuuki feels that he'll be back to normal soon, ready to face the next challenges alongside the guild. A while later, we see that the handmade table is finally finished, and Carol has to admit, that little girl is talented, not just at cooking, but overall. Still, it wasn't so simple. The table was so massive, it couldn't fit through the door, so they had to spend ages adjusting it. Meanwhile, Kokoro ran into a gang of thieves. When they saw Hima, they immediately went after her, wanting to capture the girl and sell her to a circus, ignoring the other two girls standing beside her. The problem is that they kept calling her a donkey, but honestly, the only donkey-like thing about her is her mindset. That's why Hima gets annoyed, pulls out a sword, and settles things quickly. After finishing the job, she gets hungry again. Hima then pulls out her special apple and takes a bite, and then something happens that leaves both girls absolutely speechless. After transforming, that cute and furry creature turns into a stunningly beautiful girl. And so, at the end of a long day, everyone finally finishes their tasks. Kokoro returns home, sees everything neat and clean, and smiles in satisfaction. Meanwhile, Hima is taken back to her owner by Suzume, and so that eventful day comes to a close. The next day, Yuuki ends up catching a cold, and Carol comments that it's because he always goes to sleep with wet hair. Pecorine makes some porridge and takes it to him, saying she heard that eating something hot helps soothe and improve the flu. However, after just one spoonful, Yuuki's spirit nearly leaves his body. Pecorine tries to encourage him to eat more, and he forces down another bite. Carol doesn't like it at all and says they're spoiling him too much. She insists that he just needs proper rest to get better. Seeing how unwell he is, Carol goes to check his fever, but just by touching his forehead, she jumps back in shock, because the heat is insane, like the sun itself. So Kokoro starts preparing a natural remedy like the ones she used to take in her village. The medicine even includes bugs, and Pecorine is about to put some insects into the porridge. Carol gets really upset with that idea, and says not everything can be solved with insects. And since there's no other way, the best solution ends up being to take Yuuki to a hospital. Otherwise, the two of them might actually end up killing him in the process. The problem is that Carol has no idea where to find a hospital. So with a huge map in hand, they decide to just enter the first place they find. That's how they end up in a strange location and are greeted by a girl with a witch-like face. She's dressed as a doctor and nurse at the same time, quite unusual, but she seems to take her work seriously. Pecorine even reminds Carol not to judge someone just by their looks. The doctor asks Yuuki to take off his shirt for a full checkup, and after examining and lifting his arms, she sees something strange and immediately wants to schedule surgery. Everyone goes silent, and now all they can do is wait and see what this eccentric doctor will do to help the boy recover 3 times faster. Yuuki is taken straight to the surgery table, tied down at both hands and feet. Outside the room, Kokoro gets so nervous she starts messing everything up in the hospital. Overwhelmed by worry, Carol scolded her, saying she always panics whenever something bad related to Yuuki happens. She tells Kokoro to calm down. After all, they're in a health clinic, so everything will turn out fine. Suddenly, a high-pitched sound came from inside the room, making all 3 of them go pale, and Kokoro went into panic again. If Pecorine hadn't held her back, she would have already set the hospital on fire. That's when a very thin man came running past, tripping over them and still complaining, as if they were blocking the only possible path in the hallway. He was the same troublemaker from the past few days. He pointed at Pecorine and started ranting, saying he wouldn't even be sick if it weren't for her. Suddenly, the sound of a saw echoed again from the room, and the man panicked, realizing that if he missed his chance to escape, he'd never get out of that place again. To him, this place felt more like a prison than a hospital, so while those beasts weren't around, he needed to find a way to run. The girls had no idea what was going on either, so they started to think maybe they should take Yuuki to another hospital. Suddenly, they heard a noise coming from the back, the same alley where that guy had vanished. A girl appeared holding an axe, dragging an unconscious man behind her. All 3 girls were shocked, staring at the sign that said surgery room. Carol asked the nurse about the disease Yuuki supposedly had, but she said nothing and only mentioned that today his family would take him home. And Kokoro immediately fainted. No one imagined a simple hospital visit would end like that. Ever since they formed the guild, only strange things had happened. And now that little Kokoro had dropped stiff to the ground, The other two were completely lost. And in moments like this, Pecorine says it's best to eat so you don't collapse too. The name of the girl who had handled the patient earlier was Eriko. And while she was walking down the street, she heard someone calling from a fortune-telling tent and decided to enter. The woman said she wouldn't charge anything because her father wanted to read the fortune of someone special, in this case, Eriko. On the table sat a skull, and the spirit inside came out and invited Eriko for tea. She was outraged and slashed him with her sword. She said she didn't tolerate those kinds of jokes and that she wanted to teach him a lesson. The skull quickly turned docile and started telling her fortune. Now, on her way back home, Eriko was excited, though she couldn't understand why so many weirdos kept hitting on her. Still, she always shut them down fast. She started to think that true love wasn't necessary, and sometime after that, she passed by the surgery room she had visited earlier. But the sound of someone gasping inside made her stop. Yuuki looked like a fish out of water, gasping in the dark. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Eriko staring intensely at him. The shock was so big, he almost stopped breathing. The next day, the girls were already up at home, and they wanted to know whether Yuuki had gotten better. That hospital was a bit insane, and it was making Carol even more anxious. After breakfast, they decided to go check on Yuuki, and that morning, hunger was the last thing Yuuki felt. All he felt was pure panic, because Eriko was standing there with those intense red eyes, holding a plate of rice for him. Pecorine and the rest of the group were arriving at the hospital's entrance when they noticed a crowd gathered. They were shouting that the hospital had taken everything from them. And in response, the nurse Nanaka said she didn't want to talk to people from the other side of town, and so they'd better not show up too much. But that only made the crowd angrier. They started asking whether that thief, Eriko, was around. The moment one of them said that it wasn't Eriko who showed up, it was the gleam of an axe. At the same time, Eriko commented on the noise downstairs, and then she glared from the second floor, instantly making everyone tense. Then she came down and stood face to face with the entire crowd. She asked if they were there to cause trouble, because if they were, they'd have to deal with the consequences. Eriko charged without mercy, making it clear to everyone who exactly they were dealing with. Nanaka didn't leave her friend alone and also turned the hospital upside down. The power of the two was enough to scare anyone. And to top it off, the doctor arrived. She released petals of poisonous flowers, making people faint, and the name of their group was Twilight Caravan, a guild known and feared worldwide. Once that was done, she warned that if they didn't start treatment soon, it would eventually be too late to try saving any of them. Right away, the three of them were in shock, since they had brought Yuuki there for proper care, and suddenly realized they needed to get him out of that place as quickly as possible. And while the doctor was distracted by something else, they snuck into the room only to come face to face with Eriko. At the same time, Yuuki was sitting in a chair, tied up like a chicken about to go into the oven. Eriko was just about to force that strange ring onto Yuuki's hand, and the three girls outside started planning how to fix the whole mess. Carol took charge of thinking up a strategy, and since Kokoro had a knack for dealing with bugs, this was the perfect moment to put that skill to use. Suddenly, a cloud of purple smoke filled the hospital. Taking advantage of Eriko leaving to investigate, they broke into the room to try and rescue Yuuki. Pecorine and Carol were just about to escape with him, but then they realized they were trapped. Both upstairs and downstairs, dangerous people were blocking the way, and if they were caught, there'd be no place to run. Carol decided to act brave, faking a stomachache and putting on a performance for the others, giving Pecorine just enough time to throw Yuuki out the second-floor window, as that was the only way out. Carol and Pecorine then took Yuuki to a more traditional clinic, where the doctor said he would be fully recovered in just a few days. Looking at the irritation on Yuuki's chest, the doctor commented that it seemed like a common cold, and many people often misdiagnosed it. He said that the previous treatment Yuuki had received was actually quite good, and that the professional who took care of him was truly skilled. That made the girls wonder where exactly they had taken Yuuki before. They described the location to the doctor, and he explained that even though the doctors there were a little eccentric, they had very skilled hands when it came to caring for others. So despite everything, it was still safe to trust them, and that made the girls feel much more at ease. The next day, when they went to check on Carol, she was already in a better mood. During breakfast, Pecorine pulled a flyer from her pocket that she had found. It was an invitation for everyone to go to Taga village. to help harvest seasoning ingredients. The pay was daily, and everyone would also receive the famous Tagum seeds, rare, highly valued special seeds. Pecorine wanted the whole group to join the mission, and Carol didn't even resist much. It didn't take long for everyone to be on their way. The journey was smooth and filled with beautiful scenery. It felt more like a group outing. Carol spent the whole day trying and only managed to collect one tiny seashell. Meanwhile, Kokoro was gathering insects to eat. As the sun began to set, Carol had caught just 2 tiny fish. Kokoro tried to cheer her up, saying they could still make soup with the vegetables and frogs her master had caught. For her, it was better to chew on something than go hungry. Pecorine returned full of excitement. She had caught some huge birds, enough to feed everyone easily. Her experience working at a restaurant really made a difference at times like this, and no one could believe how tasty the meat turned out. Then, she brought back some wild fruits she had found. Kokoro was about to taste one to see if it was sweet or spicy, but then noticed a frog that had eaten it rolling around on the ground. Carol, slightly out of it, suddenly hugged Kokoro, and it's in moments like that that everyone's true selves come through. In the end, almost everyone fell asleep, except for Kokoro. She stayed there enjoying a cup of tea, watching her friends sleep around the campfire. Kokoro silently gave thanks for being there with them, and the next morning, each person went off to clean up. Yuuki seemed to attract trouble like a magnet, but even so, Kokoro let him go wash his face by the lake. But when he came back, he was already stuck inside a monster's mouth. The creature ran off with Yuuki, but luckily an arrow came flying from somewhere and struck the monster, saving Yuuki though it sent him flying. Yuuki crashed into a tree trunk and passed out, and even unconscious, he couldn't hear anything. When he opened his eyes, he found himself staring at a piece of wood with a face. He looked around, picked it up, and gave it a shake. That's when a little girl jumped out from behind a tree. She looked very shy and could barely make eye contact with him. Yuuki handed the piece of wood back and thanked her for the help. The girl gave a small bow and introduced herself as Aoi. Then she quickly added that she wasn't strange. She just liked talking to puppets, which was totally normal. That one was number 1, which she used for practice whenever she didn't have company. Aoi, despite being able to talk to animals and plants, unfortunately never had any human friends. So she always dreamed of finding people to befriend, and that's how the years went by. She still talked to number 1, but hardly interacted with others, so she didn't have much news to share. She blamed herself for that, saying she still had a long way to go before she could have real friends. Yuuki tried to say something, feeling a bit awkward, but Aoi thought he was just as lonely as she was. Someone who wanted friendships but had no one around. So they decided to become companions and formed a group together. Aoi asked number 1 if he had already come up with a cool name, but then she answered her own question. Yuuki stood there, not really knowing what to do. Part of him wanted to sneak away quietly, but he figured it was better to stay until his friends arrived. And Aoi became completely embarrassed, greeting them in an awkward way. And so everyone continued on their journey, with Aoi following behind. Carol invited her to walk with them, but Aoi was too shy and preferred to stay in the back. Pecorine commented that it was lucky they ran into Aoi just as they arrived in Targan to gather fruit. Soon, a very beautiful girl appeared, welcoming everyone to Targan. Her first question was about the name of their group. Kokoro froze. She had never thought of that before, but Pecorine quickly saved the moment by saying the name of their guild was the Gourmet Guild. The girl introduced herself as Misato, from the Forestier Guild. Alongside her were a few other girls, like Hatsune, who was probably lost or asleep somewhere at that moment. Misato said that soon the team from the Elizabeth Park Guild would also arrive to help. Everyone just had to wait a bit. Kokoro remembered that that was the guild of the girl who had helped her once, when she went shopping alone. Meanwhile, Hima and her team were on their way. Their guild had 4 members. When they went to rest, they noticed something bizarre. Several dark shadows that looked just like them. Even their magical powers were identical, like eerie reflections. The Gourmet Guild team circled around the village and ended up finding a girl, floating way up high, sound asleep. Even after crashing into a stone pillar and falling to the ground, she kept sleeping. Pecorine went over and woke her up, asking if she was okay. The girl was Hatsune, also from the Forest Guild, the one Misato had mentioned earlier. In the forest, Hima and her teammates quickly defeated the fake copy of Hima, but just when they thought things would be easy, a strange energy appeared and gave them a serious beating. The one who attacked them was Christina, who was Carol's partner. Hatsune then talked about her younger sister, who loved books. Her name was Shiori, and even with poor health, she could stay up all night reading. Hatsune had bought some new books and just wanted to see her sister again. No one there knew that at that exact moment, the much-anticipated sister was facing a huge problem on the other side of the forest. Sometime later, we see the Gourmet Guild crew waking up early to pick fruit in the fields. Kokoro took some soil in her hand and noticed how well it had been cared for. The drainage was excellent, everything was in order. The smell of the spices was so good that it made everyone hungry just from the scent. Hatsune showed up too, and now she was no longer left lying in the streets. It turns out that every time she uses her powers, she runs out of energy and falls asleep, no matter where she is. Because of that, she decided to stop using her powers, and everyone was surprised. After all, it was the first time they met someone with such special abilities, a power so great that it made the person fall asleep. Misato tried to reassure her, saying everything was fine, and that she could trust them, since everyone there seemed like good people. Soon, the noise of the villagers drew everyone's attention. They ran to see what was going on and saw the Elizabeth Park group being brought in on stretchers. Mihiro, barely conscious, said they had faced a group of imposters in the forest. Not only that, but they had also been attacked by a very strange and cruel woman. As for Shiori, they had gotten separated from her during the attack, but they did their best to help. Surviving that encounter had been extremely difficult. Kokoro ran to help Hima, who was badly hurt, while at the same time the villagers started whispering among themselves, and the rumors were confirmed. Many people had seen perfect copies of themselves in the forest, and they were being attacked by those clones. And on top of all that, even the innkeeper had gone missing several days ago. Hatsune decided to use her power to search through Rima's memories and immediately realized the situation was really strange. She became desperate, wanting to run off to find and save her sister. But Misato held her back, saying they should rescue Shiori together. Yuuki agreed right away, saying he would go too. Aoi also decided to join, and that completed the group, with everyone determined not to leave anyone behind. In the end, this wasn't even the Gourmet Guild's mission, and they didn't have to get involved. But they're the kind of people who just can't turn their backs on a situation like this. What they didn't imagine was that deep inside that forest, there was already a powerful trap set, just waiting for someone to walk into it. Pecorine remembered to call Karen for this trip, but realized she had already been missing for quite some time. Meanwhile, our villain, after manipulating the mind of a local resident, simply absorbed his soul into herself. And without needing to explain anything else, it was already clear she was going to be a serious problem for our heroes. Hima had already recovered thanks to Kokoro's care and returned to the place where it all happened. Aoi noticed the atmosphere there felt strange, kind of repressed, as if the place was afraid of something. Hatsune used magic to fly over the area, but suddenly felt an energy coming from somewhere. The energy was targeting her. Luckily, it wasn't her time yet, so Hatsune escaped unharmed, but the energy drained all her strength, and just as she recognized a familiar name, she became dazed. Shiori appeared to confront Hatsune, but everything was strange. Shiori began changing colors, going from gray to red, and then she decided to attack her own sister. Hatsune gathered all the strength she had to defend herself, and after turning dark, Shiori became even more powerful. The impact of it all shook the entire forest, destroying a considerable portion. And when the others arrived, all they saw was Hatsune kneeling on the ground, crying. They told her not to give up, because they still needed to understand what was going on. And while all of this was happening, Carol was isolated at the top of the hill. She feared that if things kept going this way, the village would be destroyed. Earlier, Pecorine had already noticed Carol's strange expression and became suspicious. Carol hid what she was thinking and replied, saying she was just imagining things. She said not everyone wakes up cheerful like her. And while they were talking, a sharp scream pierced the air, followed by very strange sounds. Pecorine didn't hesitate and ran off. The village below was completely surrounded by demonic creatures. Terrifying souls chased the villagers. In shock, Pecorine managed to arrive in time and save a girl, and an arrow flew. Right past them, it was from Shiori. Yuuki and Hime ran after her and saw that the path led to the village. As they were about to try helping everyone, Christina appeared. Hime warned everyone to stay alert because she was responsible for the attack on Elizabeth's guild. Christina easily found their weaknesses and charged in. Yuuki tried to defend, but couldn't handle it. Kokoro managed to create a barrier in time, and since Yuuki couldn't take the pressure, he collapsed and passed out. In a dream, Yuuki met a familiar goddess named Amis, who awakened him, and for the first time, Yuuki truly panicked, begging to return to reality immediately. His group was in a life or death battle, so he needed to go back as soon as possible to help. Amis just shook her head, surprised by how quickly Christina and Yuuki had reunited, but it seemed even she didn't fully remember. At the moment, Amis couldn't interfere in the real world, and only he could help Kokoro's group. She then told him to release the power of the warrior princess, the one he used, before he lost his memory. She asked him to remember it and save his friends. Meanwhile, during the battle, even Hima, with her strong heart, had fallen. Yuuki suddenly woke up, as if by a miracle, and immediately used his power to strengthen everyone. The group felt a new energy, as if they had been reborn, and they became much stronger. First, Hima turned human and bravely went on the attack. They almost managed to turn the tide. Yuuki tried to finish it, but Christina didn't let him. She easily blocked Yuuki's sword and even kicked him far away. And since she already got what she needed that day, she left. And now it seems that Shiori has been overtaken by darkness. But if she still has any awareness, there must be a way to fix this. Pecorine kept fighting against the dark power, but of course, she couldn't handle the situation. Carol started off just wanting to observe everything from afar, but in the end, she couldn't resist, and she joined the fight as well. Amidst the smoke rising from the chaos, Hatsune appeared out of nowhere, entered Shiori's mind, and managed to escape. They joined forces to get out of the mental domain, driving away all the darkness from her soul for good. Everyone united to eliminate all dangers, and thus peace returned to that calm village, without anyone getting hurt. When they came back from the village, the Gourmet Guild completed several new missions, and even gained recognition from Lady Caring, who is part of the Guild Management Association. They enjoyed many days together, scattered around that huge field, which was the main rice area of Landisal, and everyone was excited with the work because the rice was amazing. But lately, wild animals had been invading and disturbing the lives of the villagers. Birds and boars kept arriving to cause trouble, and the farmers couldn't get rid of them. So now the mission was to help the farmers put an end to these pests, and the reward would be the famous rice, the best rice of all. Carol couldn't escape having to explain everything to the Demon King about what happened in Targum village, and she was trembling with nerves. The queen had even given her an extra task to watch over Yuuki and report everything he was doing, and that marked the end of her memories. Carol took a sip of water and looked toward the guild, reflecting to herself why she needed to keep an eye on these people. To her, it made no sense. While the group was discussing which mission to take, Yuuki noticed a paper pinned way at the bottom. It was a mission to find a master. Caring quickly told everyone that it wasn't even a real mission. Carol thought the whole thing was a waste of time and walked away, not taking anything this time, but Yuuki kept holding that paper, deep in thought. As they walked out, they came across some kids making noise and crying. Carol said anyone who wanted could care about that, but she wouldn't. Then she headed home, but the children quickly stood in front of her, blocking the way and refusing to stop crying. In the end, they all ended up sitting in a diner talking, and that's when they found out the kids were the ones who had posted that mission request. The little ones really wanted to find the master to show them the path to becoming real adventurers. Carol asked why they were so excited to become adventurers, and the answer was obvious. They wanted to be real adventurers and improve everyone's quality of life. And that made everyone uncomfortable because deep down the children showed more interest in being adventurers than they did. Yuuki then agreed to become the kids' master right there. Later on, Carol was lying on a hammock thinking about what to do. This mission seemed simple, but was actually a lot of work. Carol said she wasn't meant to be an instructor because she didn't have patience for kids, and if those children hadn't been well behaved, she would have already lost her temper. Meanwhile, Pecorine was preparing some crafts for Yuuki to give to the children. After the mission, she didn't say anything, but the craft Yuuki was making looked kind of strange. The next day, Pecorine's first class was a treasure hunt. The places marked with an X on the map were where the treasures were hidden, and the task was just to find and bring them back. Yuuki was put in charge of watching everyone, and Carol let out a sigh, feeling an anxiety she couldn't quite explain. The three of them stayed hidden behind the trees, just watching Yuuki and the kids begin the first task. The compass pointed north, but the boy thought he just had to follow that path and guided the children. The result was that they ended up in a mess. The little ones were surrounded by spiders and took a while to get out of it. At one point, the three girls warned Yuuki, and he seemed to notice the alert, but instead of going back to the correct path, he turned the map completely the wrong way. The right path, which had taken so much effort to prepare, was ruined, and Pecorine tried to use her special item and outfit she had spent the entire night making. She tried to warn the kids that path would lead nowhere, but unexpectedly the group of children teamed up and defeated her quickly. The trail got more and more complicated, with everyone ending up in the most dangerous places. They encountered several monsters along the way. Yuuki had already lost count of how many traps he had fallen into. Carol and Kokoro worked extremely hard to save him, and after that, everyone sat down exhausted, and Carol couldn't understand why. In the end, everything always ended up falling on her and the other girls. To top it off, it seemed like Yuuki only knew how to cause trouble. He ended up right inside the mouth of a monster bird, and there went Kokoro, Carol, and Pecorine to defeat that creature. They realized that this was the real one responsible for ruining the crops. And now everything made sense, because not even gathering all the farmers together would be enough to handle this problem. And after a whole day of facing creatures, everyone was exhausted, with no strength left at all, but everything was resolved when Pecorine found some food. Once things calmed down, the three kids woke up and started thinking they were the ones who got the job done, and Pecorine, with a smile on her face, said that the mission had been a request from the farmers, and in return, they would be rewarded with rice, the best kind of rice. In the end, Pecorine used that rice to prepare a delicious meal for everyone, and as always, the dish turned out amazing. Now we see the children having fun with baby ostriches on the other side of the field. The thing is, when an ostrich is born, the first living being it sees becomes a mother to it. And it looks like those three kids had already been adopted by the little ones. Landasol is a huge city where you can shop and even get a coupon to enter a lottery. Kokoro found a shoe that she believed would look perfect on Yuuki. She took 4 coupons and spun the wheel 3 times, only landing on white balls, until on the final spin, something seemed to happen. Later, we hear Carol mentioning that Kokoro had been the lucky one to win the grand prize from the main raffle. They packed their bags and got ready to enjoy a trip to the beach. Sometime later, with Yuuki nearly asleep, Kokoro showed up in the room, where she explained that she had grown up isolated in the mountains, so she never understood anything about swimsuits. She didn't even know if what she had was actually nice, so she came to ask his opinion. The store clerk had praised her, but to Kokoro, if Yuuki didn't like it, she wouldn't even wear the outfit. When Yuuki gave his approval, Kokoro let out a relieved breath. She had even tried to get a book about swimming from the library, and in the silence of the night, the two of them practiced swimming right there on the floor. The next day, the weather was perfect for the beach, and everyone was excited. Carol stayed off to the side, all shy, not expecting that right after receiving a mission to watch over them, she'd end up enjoying a beach day with everyone. Pecorine and Yuuki started playing in the water, splashing each other. Yuuki had no idea what he was doing and ended up getting a face full of salt water, only realizing afterward that the water was salty. Kokoro carefully explained that seawater is salty and he needed to keep his eyes shut to avoid the sting. He understood the trick and started splashing water at them. Pecorine, excited, began throwing water at both Kokoro and Yuuki, who ended up drifting away, carried by the waves. Of course, they weren't going to leave Carol out of it. Pecorine went over to her and asked if she didn't know how to swim. She said she didn't, so Pecorine had the brilliant idea to push Carol onto a float, pretending she was a ship. The experience left Carol terrified, and when they came back, Pecorine was exhausted. Kokoro was surprised to see her like that, so Pecorine decided to reveal a secret. She explained that the armor she wears gives her more strength, restores energy, prevents pain and cold, and does many other things. But the downside is that it leaves her with an absurd hunger. Sometimes she even passes out from it. Without those clothes, Pecorine is just like any normal girl. Kokoro realized that both her strength and her insane appetite had a hidden cause. Carol grew curious and asked if she could go around telling that to other people. But Pecorine laughed and said it was no problem. Out of nowhere, they ran into Suzum again, the mate. She was losing control of the cart because the donkey had taken off down the beach road. Kokoro's group went to help, and while chatting, they found out that Saren was nearby, opening a new store. They ran to say hi to their big sister, and even took the chance to eat. Saren was really happy to see the Gourmet Guild enjoying themselves, and the rumors were true that group really loved a good meal. Even so, something strange was going on. In the middle of that heat, the restaurant was almost empty, even though it was serving incredible dishes. Saren mentioned that there was a rival food stall nearby, and their main dish had taken away all of her customers. In the end, there wasn't much to be done after all. Competition is competition. Pecorine tried to comfort her, saying they could show up every day to eat, and that would surely solve the problem. But then a question popped into everyone's mind. What exactly was the secret behind the competitor's menu? The other stall was massive, the service was lively, and the crowd there never stopped coming. Visually, it was hard to compete with all that. But what really made the difference was their technique. Their barbecue was truly outstanding. Only then did the person in charge. She decided to introduce herself, saying she was Aquino, the leader of the Mercurius Foundation, and explained things more clearly. On this beach, the custom of eating ice cream was now a thing of the past, because after a cold sea bath, what the body really asks for is hot food and a sweet treat to give energy. Aquino then went over to challenge Saren, but the owner of the stall stood her ground without even considering working for someone else. Mifuyu couldn't take the tension and ended up speaking her mind. The leader's real interest was to count on Saren's talent, but she didn't know how to invite her properly. She also complained that with so many inexperienced people around, it might be complicated. That kind of comment only made Carol's anger grow stronger, making her even more determined to show what the Gourmet Guild was capable of. Still, Saren explained that Aquino wasn't a bad person. Despite coming from a rich family, she decided to build her own path by founding the Mercurius restaurant on her own. The restaurant owner felt grateful for the Gourmet Guild's support, but they all also felt a little awkward for disturbing everyone's rest. From the beginning, this group's goal was always to explore and try out different foods, but they reassured Saren, telling her not to worry. Meanwhile, on the other side, two Mercurius employees were taking a break after a tough shift. One was eating takoyaki while the other drank wine, saying she came to help because Aquino was opening another store. But during her walk, she kept bumping into lovebirds, which was driving the blonde girl crazy because she was still single. To make things worse, she was so drunk she couldn't even begin to understand what was going on around her. In the end, her friend threw her into the sea, believing the ocean would wake her up to reality. The blonde girl had her feet sticking out of the water, and her friend wondered if the sea there was shallow. But right after that, the seawater suddenly rose, and a monstrous scream was heard across the entire beach. Everyone started running, saying a monster had appeared, and the noise reached all the way to Pecorine and the rest of her group, who were fishing nearby. Pecorine didn't hesitate for a second before running to try and help. Once she understood the situation, she wasn't afraid to take a risk and pulled her friend out of the mess using only the strength of her arms. The situation was chaotic, but brute force alone wouldn't be enough. Everyone joined forces, and together they managed to subdue the giant creature. After that, they finally got to relax. In the end, the years-long rivals decided to call a truce, especially after Saren managed to recover her customers, so no one came out as the loser. Both recognized how important it was to compete and cooperate at the same time. They thought about the possibility of growing together, and after the reconciliation, Carol invited everyone for a swim. She used a spell on all of them, allowing them to explore the ocean floor and enjoy a brand new view. Kokoro wanted to deliver the fresh seafood to the restaurant owner, and since Pecorine had gone out shopping, she didn't go along. Kokoro thought it best to take it right away, since it was still fresh. But when she opened the door, she was met with an even weirder atmosphere than usual. Two regular customers were practically on their knees, begging the owner to prepare something for them, while the chef just hugged his knees and kept repeating he wanted pudding. Kokoro thought about reminding the bar owner to get some rest, but before she could, he had already started making more pudding. Yuuki looked up and said there was something strange up above, but no one else could see anything unusual. Then a mysterious voice appeared, introducing herself as Shinobu, a fortune teller from the city. She came because she heard the shop owner was showing some strange symptoms, so she decided to investigate on her own. Soon after, she realized there was a spirit going crazy in the bar, right above the man's head. The ghost was haunting the shop owner to force him to keep making pudding. Shinobu also noticed that Yuuki had the gift to see supernatural things, so she quickly invited him to visit her guild. They went there, and the atmosphere in her guild was quite spooky. Suddenly, a weapon fell right in front of Yuuki, scaring everyone. Up above, two little girls were trembling in fear. They didn't like having a stranger there and blamed Shinobu for bringing someone from the outside. They explained that this visitor might be someone who could help them revive the King of Shadows, the famous legendary vampire they adored. Kokoro was completely lost, since just hearing those names sounded way too dangerous. When the two tried to escape, a cloud of bats appeared behind them, accompanied by a voice that blocked any chance of escape. Yuuki and Kokoro had no option but to move forward through the dark house. In the center of the room, there was a giant crystal, and from within it, a person opened their eyes and greeted Yuuki and Kokoro. That person was none other than the Queen of the Night herself, named Ilya. Kokoro quickly sensed the concentrated magic within the crystal, and at the same time, Ilya opened a portal and materialized before everyone. But as soon as she stepped out of that place, her body shrank, becoming short and super cute. Shinobu immediately made sure to explain who she was. That was the Queen of the Vampires, the supreme leader who once led a war against humans, elves, and beastfolk. She was ultimately defeated in a divine battle and ended up sealed away, but they had managed to break that seal. However, part of her body was still sealed, which meant the vampire queen lacked sufficient mana. That's why she was stuck in this miniature version of herself. Even so, Kokoro remained suspicious, worried the queen might want to devour her master, but she soon realized that wasn't the case. Ilya placed her hand on Yuuki's chest and sensed the dormant energy within him, realizing that this was the key to restoring her full strength. However, things quickly took a turn when her own bats started attacking her, taking everyone by surprise, since no one expected her magic to be that weak. Upon seeing her getting attacked, Yuuki didn't hesitate. He grabbed the queen and tried to escape with her. Probably seeing her injured awakened something inside him, causing him to release a powerful energy. The energy burst from Yuuki's body and struck Ilya directly, restoring her adult form and returning her full power. At last, she revealed her true strength, taking control of the room and frightening everyone with her intense aura. Everyone now realized they were truly face to face with the legendary vampire. But this moment of glory was short-lived. She quickly returned to her smaller form. Kokoro reminded Yuuki that it would be best to leave while everyone was still distracted. However, when Yuuki saved the vampire queen, he accidentally spilled several puddings onto the floor, and running away after doing that wouldn't be a smart idea, especially since the little girl was now very angry and threatening to cast a heavy curse on them. Some time later, Carol was already back home waiting for the group to return when she heard knocks at the door. She opened it to find Shinobu and Miyako standing there. She immediately grew worried, thinking all that chaos would end up bringing a curse into their house. Even while crying, she let everyone inside while trying to think of a solution. Kokoro explained everything to Carol, but Carol couldn't stop panicking at the idea of sharing her phone with a ghost. Meanwhile, Pecorine was out shopping and happened to run into some familiar faces. It felt strange seeing that whole group gathered like that. One of them mentioned that the restaurant owner had been possessed by an entity that no one could see. But thanks to Yuuki, everything had been resolved, and they were now celebrating. However, right after finishing that sentence, he was smacked in the back with a pan. Pecorine thought about helping, but the one who hit him turned out to be his own mother, which actually lightened the mood. Back home, Carol was completely lost, fumbling around with a bowl, trying to make pudding, even though she didn't have the slightest idea what she was doing. Kokoro tried convincing the little ghost that no one there had any cooking talent, and suggested she wait for Pecorine to arrive, since she was the only one truly skilled in the kitchen. Even so, Miyako didn't agree right away. By the time Pecorine got back, it was already too late. Her friends had all been transformed into puddings, so she made a promise to the little ghost. She would create an amazing dish, but only if Miyako agreed to return everyone to their original forms. Pecorine quickly whipped up a fantastic pudding, and the moment the ghost girl tasted her first spoonful, she felt as if she were ascending to heaven. The little ghost was finally leaving our world and heading to the afterlife, but then Pecorine suddenly showed up holding two giant trays, claiming she had used fingers as a secret ingredient for the pudding. That revelation shocked Miyako so much that she came crashing back to Earth in sheer panic. Shinobu took the opportunity to escort the little girl away, thus bringing the ghost girl's arc to an end. And that wraps up our story. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment letting us know what you thought of the anime. That's all for now, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.